We're live. Star Wars questions. We're here. That's right. We are ForceCenter, show about Star Wars, pop culture, the ultimate adventure, life itself. Happy to be hanging out with all of you live, or if you're watching later or listening later, hello to you as well. I'm Ken Napzok.
I'm Jen Lando.
I'm Joseph Scrimshaw, and happy to be here as well.
We love diving into your questions. If you have a question for us about Star Wars, and hey, look, other centers still exist in our hearts and minds. So if you have another question, post it in chat. We'll favorite them, come back to them. Super chats are not necessary, but always welcome and appreciated, and do help us see important questions if you have one of those. But as always, Joseph, we have a main question to take us through most of this episode.
That is right. We always pull these main questions from our patrons on Patreon. Thank you to those of you who have asked questions. And if you want to, there is a post on our Patreon page with a big picture of Beaston. So just look for Beaston and then fire away with your questions. Yeah, so we encourage people to ask us complex and nuanced questions. And then every week I try to turn them into a thumbnail. And I've already seen people in the chat wisely saying, what is the actual question? And we will get into that right now. This comes to us from Joel Davis. Joel, like we encourage people to do, asks this question, but also gives a little bit of his own personal take and insight. So buckle up. Here we go. Joel says, first-time questioner, long-time listener. And for my first question, I've got a bit of an odd one for you. Here we go. Do you think how you feel about the expanded universe affects how you feel about modern Star Wars? For a lot of older fans, Star Wars was either just the original 3 films or the full 6. It was the story of Anakin Skywalker. But for those of us who are fans of the expanded universe, Star Wars was so much more. There were stories set after Andor, some about Luke Han and Leia, others about Wedge Antilles and his Rogue Squadron. There were tales set thousands of years in the past, exploring Jedi like Ulic Old Droma, Revan, and others who lived long before even Yoda. The EU had political thrillers with few or no Force users, introduced new cultures and ideas, explored the domestic side of Star Wars, and even gave us things like the clone Palpatine. In many ways, I've noticed those same elements appearing in modern Star Wars, whether it's familiar characters like Thrawn making a comeback, or Palpatine returning as a clone, or the rise of a new Jedi Order, or even the High Republic era, which feels like the EU's ancient Jedi stories reborn with more budget. I can't help but see echoes of the expanded universe throughout. As an EU fan, I feel like I've been primed to accept and embrace the wide variety of tones, genres, and time periods that Star Wars now includes. Meanwhile, imagine someone who only ever saw Star Wars as a 6-film saga might have a harder time adjusting to this new expanded approach. So that's my question. Do you think how you feel about expanded universe affects how you feel about modern Star Wars? Because for me, modern Star Wars kind of just feels like the EU, only now with movies, shows, and a lot more money behind it. LOL, says Joel Davis. Thank you for sending in this great question and your first question. And thanks for being a long-time listener, Joel. This is great because I think a lot of times if EU comes up at all in the context of modern Disney Star Wars, it's a pro or con. It's a Disney Star Wars was only born from the destruction of our beloved EU. And it's always a versus conversation as opposed to what Joel is framing as has the love of literally an expanded universe, a much larger universe with a variety of tones and eras primed people to actually like that kind of storytelling in modern Star Wars. So Ken, where do you go with this?
Oh man, let's start with me. Okay. I always say I have a complicated relationship with the EU, but I love Joel's question because I think he's speaking some truth here. There are many things that, going back to even the Clone Wars, the series, not the micro series, which might come up, but the Clone Wars series, where something will pop up and I'll be like, there, I love that. And then eventually you find out, oh, well, that was in this EU book, or that was from that. And so I'm just going to start from that positive point. I absolutely really love that. And there's never been the full 100% intention in my heart to disparage the Legends fans, the EU fans. But at times I've been grumpy. That's because I was really grumpy about it from the late 90s on, where I am a film first canon guy, or now in this era, the Disney canon, because I think it's just a little better Star Wars, not in terms of the plot, the characters, the whys. Joel's listing a lot of wonderful things, the political thriller thing. I didn't really know if I was fully aware of that, but I just think you have creators behind it who are united, not in a connected way, but united in how they're going to tell new Star Wars stories in an official way that I like and I'm on board for. So I'm in this weird spot where I have not been an EU fan, but I don't think it affects my Star Wars relationship now. I think I'm wide open to the things that they're trying to do in terms of genres or characters and new things and new worlds, but also in those like Filoni very clearly are going, hey, those are my stories too. Those are my Star Wars stories. I'm pulling things forward, the things that can work and things that I want to make work. And I like that. So I'm in a positive spot with it right now.
That's great. Jen, what is your reaction to this question?
I really liked the EU. It was very wild, and it didn't always seem consistent. But that was why we had back in the day the different tiers of canon, and so I really clung to that. Where it's like, okay, and I also did find that there were a lot of things that didn't hit with me that I couldn't get into for a variety of reasons. So now with the sequel trilogy and the new Disney era of Star Wars, it feels like it's taken some of the wild things that I liked and streamlined it. They put more guardrails in, feels more consistent, trimmed the fat. But I would like for the Dune Disney era to take some of the risks, even more risks that we got with the EU, just going wild. Why not? I don't know if we're going to get that kind of craziness that we got back in the day.
Yeah. No, I really love this perspective because I think that is one of the things about EU of like, let's throw the doors open and let's ask why not, and let's play and let's have variety in tone. And if something doesn't work, then, so be it. George won't pluck it and add it to the Clone Wars with, stakes, or fans wouldn't enjoy that. Rogue Squadron fans wouldn't like this one new Jedi Order novel, and okay. I had a mixed reaction to the Thrawn trilogy, and then I was like, oh, let me get back into it. And I read the Solo trilogy and loved that. So it's like, I'm going to read the Bounty Hunter trilogy and bounced off of that. And then I kind of got to a point that maybe this is a way that people react to Disney Star Wars too, of like, I kept wanting to get back into the EU and I kept being overwhelmed by how much, where do I start? So I think there's a lot of interesting things to talk about. There's the, what's the value in volume versus scarcity. And I think that what's the value of, the more you expand, the more risks you're going to take, which means there's the more parts where people are going to go, well, that's not Star Wars to me. A lot of interesting comparisons, I think, that you can draw directly between EU and Disney in terms of the style of storytelling, if not the actual content of the story.
Yeah. And I think with what you mentioned, like being overwhelmed by what's happening now, I mean, it's been no secret around here. We as a podcast have stopped reviewing the books. We've stopped reading the comics. I mean, I think I was the one keeping the most up with the comics here. And I just, at one point, couldn't. There's a stack of, no joke, 200 comics in my living room right now under a table that I haven't touched, never read. I just can't keep up with it. And it's that EU flashback. I have to be honest about that now in 2025 with myself. That when someone like Gilroy comes along, who I have looked at in the past, been like, does this guy respect Star Wars enough after his Rogue One comments? And now I'm like, I'm glad he retconned the K2 thing. I'm thrilled with the fun way he found to work Cassian's backstory that he wanted with the one that existed in a visual dictionary. And so in coming to that point, I'm also having more empathy for the EU fans than I did in 2014. I was in a bar in about 2016 or 17 range, and there was about 13 dudes. I'm going to let you guess what they look like. And they were all kind of drunkenly talking crap about Disney Star Wars. And one of them said, they got all these wonderful Luke Skywalker stories. Why ignore them? And I wanted to get up, lean in his ear and say, because they're dumb. That was me then. I'm in a different spot now.
Yes. Well, and I haven't read all those stories, but I have seen people who know and love the EU, point out that Luke had moments of doubts and all sorts of things in the EU as well. Some of these story points were visited. Skywalker child did fall to the dark side. Like a lot of this, there are similarities. I really like what you were saying, Jen. And what people in the comments are saying is, I think one of the most important things to the EU and to Disney Star Wars to me is to take big swings, to have more of a why not attitude. And I think George deserves credit for really doing that in the Clone Wars animated series. It did was flying under the radar a little bit, but just Zilla Beast kaiju stuff, bringing in the Night Sisters and just going crazy with that, doing his Meeber Gascon, like he really expanded what he was doing. And I feel like Filoni in particular is really making the effort to do that. I think Ahsoka took lots of big swings, and I think as long as Disney Star Wars keeps taking big swings and expanding, I think it will help Star Wars stay fresh. Ken, how do you feel about like the amount of risk taking in the EU and Disney Star Wars? Do you think they're on a similar level? Do you want them to take bigger swings and bigger risks?
I think now we have a conversation coming out tomorrow on the Star Wars News episode about scarcity surprise and what a franchise 15 years into a new era, 50 years into its entire existence can do. I think now it's just saying take bigger swings, like Jen said excellently, but that can be used, or that can be confusing and not clear what people actually mean by that. I think they have taken the swings we talked about last week of you have a Boba Fett series, but we continue George's ideas of taking the helmet off to learn more about who this cold killer is. Kenobi, what if we go off planet with Leia? All those things, and people will still come in the comments of but it was bad. Great. Cool. You're wrong, but cool. Here we are. And I just, it also comes down to personal taste, right? I have made more fun of modern Star Wars comics than I think I've surpassed my jokes about modern Star Wars comics than the EU, because there were vampires and Han and Luke were possessed, and some of the Afra's this great character that I think has been put in too weird of a Star Wars world for me to fully enjoy, but she's an important character, and I want her to be plucked from canon to put in other parts of canon, and that's just personal taste. Because Jen, you might want more possessions in Star Wars, and that's your right to have.
Yeah, I like the Screaming Citadel, right? I thought that was really fun. Wild.
Here's me reading it.
I put on my cape and I got out my Christopher Lee pictures and I said, yes, vampires in Star Wars. And thrilled. It's great.
See?
Taste. R-rated Star Wars. Going back to the R-rated conversation.
Oh, yeah. We had a good conversation on the news show that'll come out tomorrow as we're recording about R-rated. I want to go back for a minute on some of the way that Joel kind of framed this question, and I think it is a question about sort of scarcity versus expansion. I certainly know people who grew up either with the originals or with the prequels, and part of them, the value of Star Wars is the scarcity, and they consider themselves huge Star Wars fans, and they know every line of the films, and they don't like any of the television shows, have never read any of the books, and are sort of just hostile to the idea that there's more, and think the value is the scarcity. Ken, how do you feel about that? And do you know people who are just like, I'm a big Star Wars fan and it should just be the movies?
Oh, a ton of them. And for a while that was me in up to about 2005. Actually, I'll say about 2010. Even though I was watching the Clone Wars. Yeah, I think that's just kind of natural. I don't even think it's about general fans too. That could easily be the case. Like, oh, there's a Star Wars TV show out. Like, yeah, sure, we run into those fans. But there's Star Wars fans who are like, I just live in those movies, and they don't even bother with Disney Plus. I just live in these movies, and I understand it from a certain point of view. I'm a giant Indiana Jones fan, as are you two. We've discussed those movies. We love them here. I have never read an Indiana Jones comic book, and I've only played the Lego game. I do want to try to get the new one, blah, blah, blah. But, like, that's the movies for me. Oh, and Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which is a total different thing and one of my favorite shows now. But it wasn't then. So, yeah, I live like that in the Indiana Jones. Hell, I live like that in the Lord of the Rings world. I'm greatly influenced by Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies. I've never read the book. I don't care to. I have no desire to. I love the series too on HBO or Amazon. I actually think it's really good. Second season was great. No desire to go into the book. So I feel it in other areas. So I understand people in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that, Jen, about sort of the scarcity? Does the number of Disney Plus shows, the number of books make Star Wars feel less special to you like it does to some people?
I don't know if it makes it feel less special, but I was thinking about one of the reasons that I liked the EU was because there was no Star Wars. There was no Star Wars TV show. New movies were not on the horizon back in the day. And so for me, I was like, I just want to absorb Star Wars any way that I can. So I would just try whatever it was that they would throw at me. And sometimes it would stick and sometimes it wouldn't. Now, if there had been a Star Wars TV show or more Star Wars movies at that time, I don't know that I would have put up with some of the things that I was reading. I was desperate, right? And so,
Yeah.
but also to be fair, like when I went into the prequels, one of the more challenging aspects was because I had read the EU and I did have all these preconceived notions of what I wanted to see on screen. So it would actually kind of hurt my experience with the prequels. I've had to detangle that for myself. So I appreciate that everything is cohesive. It's all somewhat canon, right? It all kind of feeds in together nowadays. Can I keep up with it? No. But if we didn't have Star Wars, those books, I think they'd be even more popular, or at least I would read them.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the sort of the scarcity, because I get the idea of like, okay, it does feel different when it's really, really special. And like at this point, I feel like, hey, every time you have a lightsaber fight, try to bring something new to it, because otherwise sort of the spark of it can be lost. Like I get some of the concerns with the scarcity, but I would much rather have the variety. The variety is the reward in the EU, is Joel's question said, and I think in Disney Star Wars. And I think some of it comes down to just like how we feel about our own relationship as fans. Like there's just I love more things than I can absorb. I cannot listen to every Doctor Who audio. They put out about 18 a month, and I will never ever catch up. I can't read all of the Star Wars books I want to. I'd love to go back and reread the entire New Jedi Order. I probably never will. I'll try. And I think that sometimes that can be when you just literally don't have time to absorb it all, or if, as you have taught us well, Jen, with the, maybe you're a parent and with little kids, you don't have time to watch Andor right now. And so you feel left out. Right. And so I think there is sometimes like just a feeling of people kind of gravitate toward the scarcity, and it should be just the movies, because it feels bad to feel like I can't keep up with this thing I love. I watched the very first broadcast of the Simpsons holiday special that became the first episode. I watched every Sunday night, and in the Minneapolis St. Paul market, it was played at 6 and 6:30 every weeknight, and I watched every weeknight, and I thought, I am a born Simpsons fan. And then kids who are even people who are younger than me started being like, well, when Nelson lifts his eyebrow and framed this of season 18, and they like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it was an alienating, sad feeling to feel like, oh, am I not a Simpsons fan? And of course I can, as we preach here, you can, if you've only ever seen A New Hope and don't ever want to see another Star Wars fan, you're welcome. You're a Star Wars fan. Right. Yeah. But I think sometimes we can almost gatekeep ourselves. And I think that's a part of the do I have the time to prove my cred to be a fan when it's so expansive?
That's always a different side thing. It'd be fascinating to explore, because that's exactly that's how I feel with like the High Republic books. I loved the first series, and I haven't touched one since, and I feel bad, and I feel like lost. You're talking about The Simpsons. I was there on that. Baseball cards, Beatles, anything you love. And yes, if you're 12 and you love it, you have a lot more time to memorize every track order on every Beatles album, UK and US release. And at some point you become like I always sometimes will say, my 12-year-old self is probably embarrassed about my lack of Beatles knowledge right now. And it just, so you causes you to pull back to the point where like you forget to even listen to the things you love. And it might be that with Star Wars too. And as last couple of years, I went through not weird period. I just went through a period where I was a little overwhelmed from Star Wars, and then I felt crappy about it, so I kind of maybe pulled back of even watching it. And if you're touching on something that I think I was feeling in the 90s, where I wasn't keeping up on, I'd pass in B. Dalton Books or Walden Books, a Star Wars section, and be like, the hell's going on over there? Why is there a buff Crimson Guard guy? Like, what what? No, that's not it.
Yeah.
But it was also because I didn't have the time to go into it.
I couldn't afford cable, so even though I kind of wanted to get caught up with the Clone Wars animated series, and people were telling me, like, actually, it's getting really good. And I walked in Target and like, who the hell is yellow buff Darth Maul? What's this about then?
Savage Opress? Who is
this?
Oh no!
Who is Sauvage Opress, and what romance novel cover did he explode off of? Like, yeah.
It's a weird feeling. I feel like it's unusual for us because we are so immersed in this, and we have been immersed in this for so long. I transcribed a few years ago a High Republic conversation between the Star Wars contributors. And I swear to you, I knew nothing. Like, I was like, come on, give me a name I recognize, a species I recognize, nothing. I had to like look it up, and I felt so embarrassed. I'm like, I do not deserve to be transcribing this. I'm a bad Star Wars nerd, because it's a very unusual feeling. Hector Navarro, shout out to him. He knows everything about Simpsons. I thought I was a Simpson fan. No, I'm not. Like, he's
yes, you are.
but not. But that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. Like I applaud him. Like, his knowledge is off the charts, right? So I know what my specialty is. It's okay that my specialty is more into weirdos and creatures in Star Wars, right? I'm not going to know everything about everything. That's all right. It's all right.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We definitely have some comments and questions. Anything that you want to grab, Ken?
Let's see here. No, yes. Where? Yeah, I think. Where you pulled this? Where is it? My screen is not letting me pull anything up. The Obi-Wan Jacoby comment. Yeah, I can't.
Obi-Wan just said there's a lot of fear of missing out. Have felt about not being able to keep up with stuff like the High Republic. Yep. And I think this is, totally understood. And I want to be honest with the way I'm feeling, but I think that to me, the idea is you do not need to prove anything to be a fan. And that is a pressure that we put, that we let external forces internalize on ourselves. Fandom and loving art is not winning a trivia contest or, and that's fine if that's the way that you engage with it. But, I appreciate that when there's something that I don't know about the EU, I can Google Wikipedia, or we'll talk about it in the show. And in comments, people fill in a little bit more of what it is and why they love it. And I love that I can just be like, I don't need to have read every EU book to be a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. No, Jen,
you go ahead. You go ahead.
I wasn't going to say anything important. No.
No, I think that one of the reasons that I don't know what we're talking about. We'll talk about it off air, I guess. One of the reasons why I feel like I've had to really prove myself and to be like, no, I know every species. I know everything. I read all the High Republic books, which I have not, is because I've been asked to prove myself for years and years and years as a female Star Wars fan. It's like, oh yeah? Well, do you know so-and-so? Did you read this issue of this comic? And if you don't, nah, you're a poser, or you're doing this to get guys. It's like, what? Me? Dorky Jen reading, Thrawn? Like, what? Anyways, I've had to let that go.
It's very important. Right? It's very important that you bring that up, because that complicates it. But I'm also just imagining like some 2000s dating profile and some guy being like, I'm not dating her. She hasn't read Courtship of Princess Leia. Which I have. Which you have. It's just so funny to me. So funny. Yeah. Anyway, Joel's question wasn't about this, but it really made me think about it. I do think that is a part of the discussion of the value of EU and Disney Star Wars, is that it is expanding, and there's that complication with it. But I did want to ask about we often advocate for the buffet approach of Star Wars, that we want all sorts of different dishes, and if you don't like one, just skip it and eat the next one, and want different eras, different characters, different styles and tones. Ken, what, as a fan, what do you get out of the idea of exploring more characters, more styles, more nuance, having more dishes at the buffet? What's valuable about that to you?
I think how it makes me think of those character stories and then reflects back on things I already know and gives me different angles on it, perspectives. A lot of people commenting what Andor is doing for Rogue One, which was obviously very intentional, and they've talked about that a lot, but it happens for other things as well, where it isn't. I think sometimes it's cast off as just, oh, they're giving another backstory to the Gonk droid. Gonky has a story now, and you can get cynical about that. And sometimes maybe they lead into that in some ways. They also didn't know they were going to have a streaming series to tell, how Cassian and K2 met and all those kind of things. So sometimes it can be like that, but other times it's just, it's truly expanding. Here you go, expanding the characters' perspectives and drawing me closer to those characters, especially in a book where you can spend more time with their thoughts, right? In different mediums, it works that way for me. So that's kind of how I look at it.
That makes a lot of sense. Jen, what to you is valuable about more expansive storytelling with more variety?
I think it allows me to be able to taste the dish and be like, no, this is not for me, and find the one that's right. It's good because it kind of forces me out of my comfort zone as I've been seeing with younger generation, with the algorithm and everything, that it feeds up to you what it thinks you like. And maybe you do like that at some point in your life. But it's like, if I'm constantly being fed different things, maybe I might like something that I like. The Clone Wars, for example, I was like, I don't need to see this. And then I loved it. If I'd been left up to my own devices, I may never have come across it. But because people were talking about it so much, and then I saw the famous Night Sisters arc, I was like, whoa, this is not what I expected at all, right? So sometimes we need that variety, especially as Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I think I value the expansive storytelling of both EU and Disney, because that's always been, world building has always been one of the charms of Star Wars. Of every bit of the frame in those first three films feel like they were filled with a story onto itself, in different kinds of stories, depending on what you like. If you're really into the Force and in mysticism, what's up with Dagobah? What is that cave? If you're really interested in like pilots and military, like, well, who is Torin Farr? How do those communications work? Like, every frame is the Ewoks. Every frame is packed with, there's a different idea to go follow. And so I think that expansive nature is sort of like, it's a reward of curiosity, of like, what is Torin Farr's deal? Like, we don't need to know, but we want to know. And so I think it's a natural evolution of the quality of world building in Star Wars. And also for me, there can be a sort of a moral aspect to it, of the idea that everyone in Star Wars has value. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a reason they made their choices. And so things like, I like the Cad Bane Tales of the Underworld fine. Like, they weren't the most exciting thing ever to me, but I really like that they existed, because it continues that moral thread of Star Wars, that everyone matters. No one is just two-dimensional, down to the smallest, most background character in the philosophy of Star Wars. They're real and they matter.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Yeah, again, it just becomes a joke, right? It becomes a way to disparage Star Wars fans of, oh, you get a story for everything. But like, yeah, that's what we want. It's Cameron's saying here in chat, the Star Wars is designed as the middle of a story, so we can go in different directions, and I want to explore that stuff, new stuff, and stuff we've already explored, to get the other perspective of it. That's why I'm not done with the Skywalker saga. I'm one of the no. I want more. I want more of what's fill in the blanks or go forward with it with Rey. Like that's part of the Star Wars charm, is where we can go with the characters.
I like this comment from.
Yes, exactly, that one.
Please read it, Jen.
Don Carroll says, I don't eat fish at the buffet, but I also don't go up to people eating fish and tell them, I think it's gross. Don't yuck my yum.
Yep.
Exactly.
Have I done that? No.
Don't slap skeleton crew out of my plate. Like, come on.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ken.
There's one thing at some point I want to acknowledge, like, it's also important to, maybe shut up every now and then as I take a hammer to the EU a lot, And by the way, still will. Sorry, a lot of you haven't hung out with me at a bar. I can get kind of nasty. I'll swing a hammer at it, but then sometimes you have to make sure what's there. You talk about the Night Sisters, Jen. I love the Night Sisters. Love the Night Sisters. It wasn't until like 2017 that I learned that the Night Sisters were from the EU. And there's a lot of egg on my face for that. Much like I once had a friend tell me, "Yeah, I don't like Bruce Springsteen, but one of his favorite bands was 10,000 Maniacs, and they were doing a cover of Because the Night on VH1 and MTV every 5 minutes." I was like, "You don't like Springsteen? You don't like Springsteen? Okay, I think you do. You just like a different style of the song." So yeah, that's been part of my journey where that has caused me to calm down a little bit and just being like, "Oh, there's to Joel's original question here." God, there's a lot there that can be not plucked. Plucked could be a negative term, but just taken and reworked to fit what they're doing over here, because they're great ideas over here in the EU. Great, fun, genre-bending ideas. Let's see what we can do with them here, and that's something I've come to appreciate more over the years.
I'm going to pull this question from Obi-Wan Jacoby. We've kind of talked about this, but I'd love to dive in a little bit more specifically. Obi-Wan Jacoby says, the guardrails that y'all talk about a lot are what I prefer about canon over legends. That can be at the expense of risk-taking. Where do y'all think the line should be on that? Yeah, I think that guardrails comes from an actual Kathleen Kennedy interview where she talked about wanting people to explore, wanting people to tell their own personal story within Star Wars and explore new territory. And then their job is to kind of keep the guardrails on it. And I feel like for me, what Disney canon Star Wars has done that I like in terms of guardrails is I think they have kept the guardrails up in keeping Star Wars a little bit more space fantasy than veering too much into more standard science fiction, which this is a taste thing. This is a buffet thing. The stuff that the EU that I put down was like sometimes when Timothy Zahn and other writers get a little bit more like science fiction, I kind of feel like, well, this could be in Star Trek, or this could be in a Marvel comic where they go out into space, and it doesn't feel like that attached to the mythic in the fantasy. That's a taste thing, and I think it's a choice that Disney Star Wars has made to keep it a little bit more fantasy than straight sci-fi. And I also think the guardrails have been about the overall morality of Star Wars. Even something like Andor that deals in utter gray areas, and it elevates Luthen, it drags Luthen down, and it invites you to debate for yourself. But it does ultimately come back to that, like, it matters how we fight the fight, and we have to do this together, and we have to do this in a way where we're trying to be the best versions of ourselves. Like Andor is a great example of there's the guardrails that, this is where the story is ultimately going, is Cassian makes a better choice by not shooting Galen. But within that, there's plenty of room to hit up against the bumpers. So there are a couple of my guardrail thoughts. Jen, where do you go with the idea of guardrails in Star Wars?
I think sticking to what's true to these characters that have been created. And that's why Tony Gilroy came in with his, story Bible and was like, this is how Clea and Luthen met. This is their relationship defined. I don't want anyone else to define it, because back in the day, we may have gotten a novel from someone else in the EU that says something totally different about how they had a sexual relationship. And that would have been very different than what Tony Gilroy had envisioned. I think it's one of the reasons why people really butted up against with Luke's portrayal in The Last Jedi. And, they felt like that was not consistent with A, what they had seen on screen, and B, what we had kind of gotten in the EU, which for me, at least, Luke felt very different. So yeah, I guess consistency is where I go with all of this. What is true to these characters? And the new Disney era has been great with Leia. What is true about the character of Leia, from young Leia to General Leia? And for me, it's felt very cohesive. And that's the beauty, I think, of this new era of canon.
It's why we have the phrase emotional canon around here, where it is the connective threads of the characters and their perspectives and their journeys and their left turns and right turns and their trip ups, and I think that is what's been in place, and we know some of the famous infamous kind of decisions around some creators bumping up against the guardrails, Trevorrow, Jenkins, others. I think that's what I appreciate about this modern era. David, David here had a question. There it is. No story from the EU is representative of the entirety of it. It's hundreds of individual stories written by hundreds of different creators who all had different sensibilities, styles, and understanding of Star Wars. And David goes on to share some of the things he loved in the EU and some of the things he didn't. But I think that's both a positive of the EU in terms of creativity, but also the thing I think in the end, by 2014, what I was kind of running up against and was glad that they reset it. I love Lucina's Plagueis book. It's great. It's great. So details of it need to change. Things couldn't be the same if you were to take that story, but there's a lot in it that's in line with Star Wars. I didn't read the Obi-Wan Kenobi book from Jonathan Jackson Miller, but you did, Joseph, right? And I got to imagine that's a similar thing.
Yeah,
it's probably within the guardrails.
It's fantastic. Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, there's one thing about it that is a little wonky to my taste, but other than that, I loved it. I thought it did a great job of, Obi-Wan dealing with the trauma of what he went through with Anakin as mirrored through a conflict in front of him. It was fantastic, and had a lot of good emotional resonance with the story that was told in the Kenobi show. Same thing with those Solo books that I love from the EU. Like, you can see a lot of the same ideas in the Solo film. Yeah, I think the guardrails are, to me, like, they're not about they're about big picture feel and morality, but there's so much room in them. Like, the guardrails are allowing things that people get mad about. The guardrails are allowing the most Vespa speeders. The guardrails are allowing, Obi-Wan did leave Tatooine. The guardrails are allowing, actually, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, is referring to one specific galaxy, and there's a bunch of other galaxies. We can go anywhere and do, like, I think in terms of the guardrails aren't stopping exploration, in my opinion, in Disney Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it's a good buzzword, right? Oh, they put guardrails on it. Corporate speak. There's a lot of corporate guardrails on all this stuff, as we even discussed tomorrow on the news episode, but I don't think that's an example of it.
Got a lot of other great questions and comments. Start here. Ken, do you have any you want to grab?
I will once I get back to, there it is. Okay. Sorry. Joel, our question asker. I think age is a big aspect on it too. For a lot of younger fans, Yuuzhan Vong is as part of the DNA of Star Wars as Vader. Yeah. This is why we got to teach the kids a better way forward.
Joel also added to this with a super chat saying, I think it says something that someone like Thrawn became fundamental to the DNA in Star Wars. For a lot of us younger EU fans, he came back. I think this is always important to Star Wars and to all of pop culture, is to just be honest about the thing that we encounter. The thing that makes us fall in love with something is always going to be important to us and feel like a part of the DNA. And your Star Wars is going to be different than my Star Wars. Saturday Night Live will never be better to me than it was when I was 14 years old. And that cast will always be the funniest to me. I love Doctor Who, but I kind of still prefer the classic series to the new series because that's what I grew up with. And I think that's great. And I think it's, in fact, interesting when we can just have conversations and somebody can tell me why Thrawn is the most important character in Star Wars to me, or why the Yuuzhan Vong are awesome and a part of the DNA. If you want to tell me your experience, I love it. I think we only get into trouble when we get, headstrong and belligerent about it, and it becomes about objective rather than subjective of, Disney Star Wars sucks and it's because they haven't told Yuuzhan Vong because it's the only good Star Wars story. And like, as soon as it becomes, objective and angry, then it's a bummer. But before that, like, please own the month you were born and tell me why that makes you love Star Wars in the way you do. That's great. That's interesting. It's diversity.
But that's when you need me being just as drunk and belligerent at a bar to yell at them. Not only about that, but that, some new casts are good. And I know you do think a lot of other casts are good on SNL. No, I'm with you on that there. We all have our blind spots. I've apologized over the years as best I can of, like, I don't like the character of Mara Jade. I don't, for a lot of reasons. And some of it's the design, the era in which the character was designed. Not even the Zahn books, but as the character moved forward. And I've had to stop and realize, yeah, but for someone, especially a young teenage girl in 1991 or two, that was kind of it in terms of a direct influence and a direct icon. So I got to kind of pull back to your point, Joseph, and that's kind of what we do here at ForceCenter. It springs up. We all have our little things. The three of us have our little things that get us going there. But the lesson each week on Star Wars for ourselves is to pull back and make sure that table is as wide as it can be to let everyone in.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Jen, do you have any thoughts about elements of the EU becoming prominent in Disney Star Wars, like Thrawn?
Yeah, the Thrawn thing. I don't want to, because for me, and I've talked about this at length. I've had a very specific idea of what Thrawn should be and how he should be on screen and the performance and stuff. And I liked his appearance in the animated shows. It was all right. When you bring him to live action, I have a very specific vision in my mind of where the character should go, and it's not hitting with me. That's okay. It's all right. It's fine, because I know it works for a lot of other people. And I go to Serenity Jane. Is there a reason why Filoni might not want help from Zahn with Thrawn?
Yeah. Yeah. We all got that uncle at a party that you're just like, okay, sure.
Yep. Open to it. They should come on, just let him have a little fun with it.
He did. He did in those book series.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, in my humble opinion, I love seeing Thrawn. I think Filoni was spinning lots and lots and lots of plates with the first season of Ahsoka, and I think almost every character, with perhaps the exception of Ahsoka herself and Anakin in that great episode, were underserved. There's a million amazing ideas and a million amazing characters, and I think a lot of them were underserved. And I think hopefully with more Thrawn storytelling, I think the gap should be bridged. I would love to see a lot more of his technical brilliance. I would love to see I thought Thrawn was handled well in Rebels with the I go down to Ryloth and I look at their culture and I understand this woman Hera, and I really respect her, and I know how to fight her. And I just think the live action Thrawn needs more elbow room, more time on screen to be like, that's the threat of the week is, oh no, Thrawn understands you, and now you're cooked.
Yes,
and that's what's really cool about his character. That's what's really different about his character. He's, blue, in my opinion, evil. I know other people disagree with that, and I respect that, but I'm just gonna say my opinion. A morally compromised blue Sherlock Holmes in space. Let's go. Let's give him the room to do it.
I agree, which was stuff that, by the way, as I know very well, that Timothy Zahn put into the character he created. That's something that I think is correctly moved forward. Yeah, and he hits different for me in live action versus animation, and that's just also kind of how it happens, right? A lot of the ways, and it's definitely not Lars. It's no one's fault. I'm waiting more. I think we're going to get more in season 2. To your point, Joseph, and maybe we'll get that elbow room and get to see him really shine.
I would like that very much.
Yeah, it's just an energy. It's an energy thing for me. That I'm wanting, and maybe we'll get it in season 2. But I do have my fan castings, so maybe that's part of my problem.
What for going back with? Did you wanted Pierce Brosnan?
That'd be kind of fun. Christoph Waltz would be really fun. He's a little bit too on the, not, I don't want to say wacky, but like somebody like that kind of energy, it's a specific kind of threat and danger that you have to bring.
Yes, I mean, if you're specifically referencing Hans Landa.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that cream scene. That pie cobbler scene is one of the more attention-filled scenes in the history of cinema. And I think, that's kind of a Thrawn vibe to me. Yeah, that they could get to. Yeah.
I also think that they touch on it very lightly in Ahsoka. The reality that Thrawn has been tactically and emotionally impacted by, I'm unbeatable when it's all about angles of weapons.
Yeah.
But as soon as, big, weird space oxes turn into storms and this kid calls space whales, like as soon as the mystical goes into it, my powers of deduction and rationality are tempered.
Yeah.
And so he's got this bond with the Night Sisters. But I would love to explore just like that. All the weird Force crap is sort of like it upsets him. It doesn't match his way, the way he thinks the galaxy should function. I'd love to dive deeper and see him tortured by that.
Yeah, I agree. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and in terms of the other people are talking about it, of like, yeah, I think there are creators who are like, I want to really keep the handle on this, and it's the way they create. And Filoni is certainly in a position to say, I'll handle this character in canon.
I'll handle it from here. Indeed. Good stuff here from Commander Green. Every Star Wars era means something different to me. The OT was my childhood. The prequels were my early adulthood, and the sequels are a big part of my kids loving Star Wars. Star Wars for me is like a holiday dinner. We all sit at different tables, but we still come together to celebrate the same thing. I'm just the weird uncle that sits at the little table that likes it all. I'm with you too there, Commander. I am both the weird uncle and also enjoy the conversation of people who just allow themselves to purely love things.
Some other questions coming in here. Looking to grab. This is just something that Geek Errant shared about their relationship with the EU. My personal enjoyment of the EU is because it explored the two things after Return of the Jedi that I wanted to see more of. More of Luke's journey and a new Order of Jedi, both of which Disney hasn't fully done yet. I strongly agree with that. I would love to see Disney eventually explore both those topics. And, I think Luke's Jedi Orders still should be some sort of animated series myself.
Quadface had a question very early in our broadcast today that kind of ties to that, Joseph. What lesson can we learn from a Luke show that we didn't get in the movies? I would love to explore it. Yeah, that era, it's just ripe for exploring Luke in that moment, and I think we've got good enough tastes of it in The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, and some comics, even to the Shattered Empire comic, which was 2015, 2016 range. So just I'm fascinated with, as a kid, it was like, yay, Luke saved the day, or was part of the team that saved the day, burns his dad's armor, and now he gets to see the ghost, and he goes back to his friends. Yay, fireworks, Ewoks dancing. But waking up the next day going, cool, now who am I? Like, what's happening is always going to be interesting to me to explore Luke in that era.
Jen, what would you want to learn about Luke?
I was just thinking, I could see it like in 10 years from now, they decide that they are going to explore that more on screen, and they have a big casting search and they find their next younger Luke Skywalker. I could really, really see that. And I think people would be happy, and it could spawn a whole new era, which would be really, really fascinating, being a senior citizen getting those stories.
Stop it, Jen. Stop it.
No, okay, not 10 years, I'm not going to be a senior citizen, but like I'm going like beyond.
Yeah, we are.
Right?
I'll be eating from the early bird menu in about 6 years.
Yeah. Well, I hope before I get discounts at Denny's, I hope there's a Luke Skywalker show. And I agree. Yeah, just recast him. And,
yes,
I think Mark Hamill would be great to be an advisor. All that kind of thing. Fabulous, fantastic. In terms of what we can learn about Luke, I think that I believe in my heart of hearts, like in the EU, Luke did many wonderful things, had many wonderful triumphs, and that he had a point where he wrestles with fears. He has ups and downs, but that he had said, I did it. I was so frightened to do this. I was so frightened of the responsibility of learning everything about this order that has passed, and trying to rebuild it and do it right, and have this weight on my shoulder of, I don't want to screw up. I don't want to be this kid that Yoda and Obi-Wan was afraid I was going to be. I'm going to show them that I can be this mature, responsible leader. And he does it. And he has many triumphs, which I think builds him to his sadness. And in Last Jedi, of like, he so wants to do everything right, and he made a mistake and he couldn't save his nephew. It's a great story, and I think more storytelling time with the character will make Last Jedi richer, and I think also build the legend of Luke Skywalker and get to share with us some of his moments of triumph.
Yeah, and it just pull that Band-Aid off, recast. It's time. It's time. It's time. And
Mm-hmm.
look, I thought, still such a fan of Alden as Han. I thought that would have helped rip the Band-Aid off, but instead it just stuck it more to the wound, I guess, in other people's minds.
Some important comments here. Jay from nowhere, does Luke have to charge his hand overnight like a phone?
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, that's one of his greatest Jedi challenges, just constantly looking at blue sky on his hand. I want to make sure to share this from Eddie Gunner. I've been banned from my hometown library since I was 8 because I didn't return my copy of Shadows of the Empire. Still have it, too. Always the punk rock, hard metal rebel, Eddie Gunner.
You see, Maddie, that proves my point that Dash Rendar will lead you down the wrong path if you follow him. So,
I want to highlight this because I love the same thing, Gaz. The chap in the Book of Boba Fett did okay, but Sebastian's Stan is still a favorite for Luke Skywalker for me. I was really surprised that they did not explore that. Maybe they did. Maybe they did tests. Who knows? But I thought that could have been great. How old is Sebastian Stan, though? He's in his 40s, right? Is he 40s or late 30s? So he might be a little bit, quote unquote, too old, but I thought that would have been so cool.
He's 42. He's done. He's cooked.
Done.
He's 42. Life's
put him out
over.
the pasture. Actresses get until we're like 30. Male actors are like 40. Get some more.
Oh, yeah. He's just hitting his prime. He's going to be in a lot of movies where he's falling in love with 25-year-olds. It's going to be great. Good for you, Sebastian Stan. Good for you.
I see you highlighted it, Ken, too, but we're big fans of this scene from the Battlefront 2 story mode. Tommy says it was brief, but Battlefront 2 did a great job of adding on to the character of Luke between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. Somebody else up here said something. Oh, yeah, Cameron Stewart. I'd love to see the constant struggle with Luke's own legacy and burden, how he allows the burden to weigh too heavily on him. I think I love the post Return of the Jedi storytelling we've got in Battlefront. In that Book of Boba Fett episode, it's so beautiful that Luke is trying to slowly build this temple, do things the right way, and just he wants to show Grogu that the Force is a beautiful thing, not just like a tool or a weapon. And I think Luke so learned his lesson in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Like, you're not a warrior. It's not about rushing in. It's not about weapons and power. It's about being always the most serious-minded. And then this poor guy spends decades just trying to be the most serious-minded. And then that kind of breaks him a little bit. It's a fascinating human journey to go on with a young actor. Sorry, Sebastian.
A couple. We got about 10 minutes left in the show. So if you got any questions, super chats, anything, get them now. David Cardiff has been asking this one. Hi, all. I'm 10 minutes or so behind, but I've never read a Star Wars book or comic. I never knew where to start. But what book would you recommend and where to start? God, that's maybe out of my wheelhouse question now. But in terms of where do you go?
No, please. I was interrupting. Go ahead.
No. I still think going back to the beginning of the modern era run and just exploring it, if you can, there's a lot of different jumping on points, and we celebrate that here. But that first issue in 2015 of Star Wars is a good place to start, because everything else is kind of not super connected necessarily, but it's just it's a fun tangent, or the journey continues, and it might be referencing back to things you already read. And in terms of the books, I don't know. That's where it's overwhelming, because you can jump on at different spots. It just maybe it's the style you like of storytelling. I do agree. Obi-Wan Jacoby. Lost Stars is first recommend because it's tied so close to the original trilogy. That is true for me. For years, that's probably what my answer would be.
Yeah. I think, everybody in the comments is saying this as well. I think it's just totally about what do you like? Who do you like? What style of story do you like? What character do you like? If somebody was a huge Obi-Wan Kenobi fan, I'd be like, read that EU book. It's great. It really focuses on Kenobi. Yeah. If somebody really loved the prequels, I'd be like, maybe you want to dive into that Brotherhood novel. If somebody's just like, I really like, I'm picky about prose, I'd be like, well, here are the authors that I think are the best at actual prose writing, you know?
Yeah, I've read so many of the tie-ins, so it's not really helpful. I've been wanting to read Lost Stars because everyone raves about it, so I think that would be a good one. Otherwise, I loved Catalyst, I loved Last Shot, I loved Princess of Alderaan, but again, they all connect to existing things. Like, you know what I mean? It's not the same as like Lost Stars.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can read Lost Stars. It's YA.
I want to read it.
Meaning it's a little, 2 syllables instead of 3 syllables. You got it, Jen. It will go quicker.
Yeah, I just got to do it. All right. Instead of looking
Yeah.
at Instagram, I'll read.
A lot of people are shouting out Shadow of the Sith. Not only is a quality novel, but great Luke storytelling in this era. And I totally agree. There's some great, weird, pulpy stuff. You can fast forward to the end of Ken and I's review where we make up a song based on the book.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. General questions coming in here too. We have Brian has a question. We talked about sci-fi earlier. How do you feel about time travel being added to Star Wars? It's the one thing I don't want. The World Between Worlds is very close to that. Years ago, I think we did do a time travel episode about like the questions around that. I'm with you, Brian. I think for the most part, it's something I don't like in anything. Like Star Trek's a little different. I can deal with there, but I'm not a multiverse kind of person. The moment someone says, "Well, Star Trek, they unveiled the Kelvin timeline," like, well, then I hate it. I don't know why, and it's just something that's personal taste. And so, World Between Worlds works for me, but even then, it gets kind of in a mind bending kind of way. When I actually was watching Andor and was like, so around this point, Ahsoka just got yanked out of the past. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Let's see if that fits in. But anyways, that's personal taste.
Yeah. But if she has always been yanked out of the past, is it time travel? And that's a thing that fans have strong opinions on. And I think that that's one of the wisdoms of the World Between Worlds is it is playing with ideas of destiny and fate as much as it is with time travel.
Indeed. Absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
Jen, do you want to hit 88 miles per hour in Star Wars?
No, I don't. I like you said, that's such a good point about I got to keep everything in track and the timelines, and I don't need any more fussing with that. It's already hard enough for me.
Yep.
Yep. All right, Jen, I know we got to start wrapping up here, or else your kids will just be stranded at school for life, right? Is that probably
yes?
How does
Yes.
that work?
Oh my gosh, I don't know how they would get home. Oh wait, Joel Davis has a great recommendation. Bloodlines. Yes, that's a great book. Great.
Yeah, Leia fans, sequel fans. It's got one of the greatest just details that lives in my head of Han and Leia trying to spend quality time together, and Han really only wanting to get food from like basically sloppy food trucks and like eating some kind of like space fajita and spilling it on his pants. Like that is the most just pedestrian day-to-day life depiction of a fantasy character like Han Solo. That's dead accurate.
Yeah. Love that. Quick one here. What if the Separatists won the Battle of Coruscant and Anakin Obi-Wan's rescue failed? I know Pops controls both sides, but maybe he rules by the sideline. I just love that. To me is a question. A quick answer. This was a question of Palpatine's little burn book. Like he's probably got a lot of different ways. That's what I love about him. Is Padme does a little wrinkle. All right, that sucks, but I'm going to try to use it to his advantage. A lot of things fell into place for him. He gives you the sense that he controlled it all, but I think there was some jazz improv in Palpatine's plans. Not that I'm rooting for him, but I'd be fascinating to know a little bit more about what that would have been for him.
Yeah, I think for me, if that rescue failed, then Anakin would have failed one of the many tests that Palpatine gave him, and he'd be like, "Nope,
Yes.
I'm going to keep the war going for 2 more years. Anakin still needs some time to cook. He's not at the level of skill or violence that I need him yet."
Yeah, indeed. All right, one housekeeping. Quadface had a housekeeping question for us. Have they gone back and done the 007 series on Patreon? We have not, and we definitely want to. Thank you all who listened and those who purchased it from our store. It's still available in the Patreon store. I think we launched that in a different period of our lives. Joseph wasn't making a feature film. I was working another job. Like things changed, and we'll get back to it. We want to get back to it. We haven't forgotten about it, but we love diving into that.
I was thinking about this weekend and feeling bad that we haven't finished, but I'd very much like to.
Yeah, indeed. All right, I think that's it. Anything else? Jen? You ready to take us home?
Yeah, we're counting the seconds until someone mentions a Salamuri, and this whole chat burns. I love them. I love them. And I know no one else does.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will revisit them and hold. They might be the fish at the buffet that I need to put down.
Taste it. It's delicious.
They are the fish stick of Star Wars lore.
Just dip it in some tartar sauce. It'll go down easy.
I do love tartar sauce, but for my French fry. Actually, I love fish and chips. All right. It's like fish and chips where you get it at the 99-cent store when you're broke, which might be my afternoon anyways. All right. Thank you all for supporting and listening. News show tomorrow. We talk about Battlefront 2 getting popular again. R-rated Star Wars, Mando and Grogu getting an entire month to itself. It's all on the news show tomorrow right here. So follow us on social media, ForceCenter Pod. You can get merch down below and links to TeePublic Fourth Wall. You can also support us at Patreon at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Follow me at Ken Knapsack. If you're local in the LA area, big show Friday night, Flappers Comedy Club, Burbank, 7:30 p.m. Mark Ellis and I co-headlining, Sarah D featuring. Come on out if you'd like to do that. Jen, where can they find you and your hot takes on space lizards that destroy the Force?
That's right. You can see my video on that on Instagram at Jennifer Landa or TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138.
There you go. Joseph, take us home with your contact locations and updates on the film and how they can still support you.
Yeah, you can follow me on Blue Sky. You can check out my website, josephscrimshaw.com, for links to my blog, Finish Your Monsters. And if you want to help me finish up the post-production of this horror film that I wrote and directed, you can go to this link for an organization called Film North for a one-time tax-deductible donation. Thank you to the ForceCenter fans who have helped out in many different ways with this film. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you always. We'll see you next time here on ForceCenter.